You've tuned into Horns Up, and beware, this episode will throw off anyone who doesn't understand Hindi or Urdu. And that's because our conversation today is peppered with phrases and references from life in Pakistan and India. We're talking to one of the most influential and historic figures from Pakistan's heavy metal scene, Babar Sheikh, who's responsible for one of the country's foremost heavy metal bands, Dusk.
Yep, we are joined by Babar Sheikh, somebody who I've been following for, I think, almost 10, 15 years now, more. And they're probably, they are Pakistan's oldest surviving metal acts. And very lovingly, we've compared him to the Sahil Makija of Pakistan.
We've also compared him to the Devin Townsend of Pakistan.
Oh, yeah, that's true. We did that too during the episode.
Yeah, it's a freewheeling chat, honestly. It's one of those, it's more of a conversation and a chat rather than an interview. So, why don't you grab your favorite beverage and just settle in and relax because this is a long one. Here we fucking go. And now
Yeah.
joining us all the way from Karachi on his fancy new Bluetooth hands-free device, it's Babar
You
from
don't want
Dusk.
to. Thank you so much. Thank you for having me, guys.
Yeah.
Bluetooth device. It's called iRocker. That's
Oh, wait, I have the same one. Then.
Really?
I think
it's so crazy. The day I bought it, I was on a film shoot, and it's kind of like this fancy box that's a charger, and it opens up and it's like magnetized, etc., etc. Super cool. You leave the headphones and group, they just go inside. So I was kind of like, nicely liking it. And, you're on a film set. I'm nicely listening to, because our choices of music, you can't play on a film set. I can't play on my work.
Yeah.
Because, I also
He'll get
try to have
judged.
completely, yeah. So I was like nicely listening to some Enslaved on my iRocker. And then I forgot them. And I was like, damn, too many people in our culture, we call it nazar lag gaya. I don't know आपके यहाँ क्या होता है मैंने कहा यार किसी ने नजर लगा दी है मेरे स्पीकर गए and then by some twist of fate they actually came back to me somebody from the crew returned them saying that we found them lying here and there which is
तो
very
मतलब
rare.
उसके पास उसने पहले ही या तो आप पे काला तिल लगा दिया होगा या तो एक सुरक्षा कवच कहीं ना कहीं पे है.
The other thing they say also, which is more appropriated in the Muslim sense of the word, is halal की कमाई कहीं नहीं जाती. Actually, हर जगह कि आप जब हलाल के पैसे से मेहनत करके कोई चीज खरीदते हो तो it doesn't, And this is funny. It happened to me. I drive an open Jeep, So your interaction with the public, with the general public over signals, etc., is quite more in terms of if you're driving in a car with like shisha upar and AC and all of that, you're more. I feel you're more with public and people will make a comment or say hi or pass a smile. I like that. So there was this rickshaw guy. I think you guys call it auto. So there was this rickshaw guy and
रिक्शा भी चलता है.
रिक्शा भी चलता है. रिक्शा चलता ही है actually. तो वो रिक्शा वाला था उसका एक 100 रुपए का नोट बाहर उसकी जेब से बाहर गिरा हुआ था and by some strange defying the laws of physics it wasn't flying out. It was just sort of hovering there next to his pocket. And, people wear shalwar kameez here, so the pockets are kind of flimsy also. So I told him, मैंने कहा 100 रुपया तुम्हारा 100 रुपया निकलने वाला है. And he grabbed it and he said, halal की कमाई कहीं नहीं, मेहनत की कमाई कहीं नहीं जाती. मैंने कहा, good, अच्छी बात है, very good. So yeah, I think, sorry for going off track right in the beginning.
No, that's awesome. I think it's going to be one of those kind of interviews.
So, one of the things at least I wanted to start off with, and it's considering we're doing like an Indo-Pak episode, right? So a common friend of ours once told me that you're a huge fan of the band Millennium, which is, this big Indian heavy metal band from the 90s. So I'm very curious to know, how did you discover them? I mean, because this is like pre-internet era, right?
Pre-internet.
Has to be tape trading.
Boss, no, it wasn't tape trading. It was something even. So what was happening was that I had no idea I had no idea that there would be a scene existing in Asia in any manner. I was very oblivious, and this is like I'm talking about early '90s. I'm discovering Beneath the Remains from Sepultura, and Arise, and like I'm discovering everything. Like I'm playing stuff from Battery, Venom, uh, going to paper markets on the weekend. यहाँ पे एक पुराना market है, which is like 300, 400 years old market called Bolton Market.
Okay.
It's the downtown of Karachi. And वहाँ पे there was a paper market back in the day, and up to everything is digital. तो उस वक्त वहाँ पे रिसाले पुराने magazines आते थे,
Okay.
back
Okay.
issues.
Uh,
And if you had to find anything extreme over there, you had to really dig in. And I used to come out with paper cuts at the end of a Saturday.
Yeah.
Because you would go into heaps and heaps to find, my favorite magazine from back in the day was a magazine from America called Metal Maniacs.
okay.
This is like,
Yes, yes.
Kerrang and everything was big, but Metal Maniacs was the right place smack in the middle. It wasn't too underground and it wasn't too mainstream. So it was
Yeah.
very, very solid. Like the biggest band they would feature in 1991 would be Slayer, So they wouldn't go to like more sort of, or to khair. Back in that time, man, I got in touch with my cousins uh, who, because of some family feud, I wasn't seeing. And, our families weren't seeing each other. And then I met one of them somewhere at another relative's house, and we really connected. And he said, "What music are you into?" And I said, "Man, I listen to metal." And they said, "Oh, and they're like, my cousins are like four brothers, and they're like,
Okay.
we're all into metal." And I was like, "Whoa." And I told my dad, I was like, take me to their house. If you guys are fighting, it's not fair. The kids should like meet. I did some of that philosophy, and I reached their house, and they're like sitting on this haven of like CDs, original CDs, and they immediately took out a 60 or 90-minute tape, and they started taping me like a mixtape from there. They had a very fancy, I hadn't got any fancy stuff.
Did you
So,
have long hair at that time?
no way, man. I was like what, 13 years old, man. 12.
Wow.
तो मतलब तब allowed नहीं था.
अलाउड कॉन्सेप्ट ही नहीं था. हाँ, अलाउड तो दूर की बात, कॉन्सेप्ट भी नहीं था इतना. So they said, "Do you have MTV?" And I said, "No." I mean, I think this was a time that my father had just bought our first VCR, So we were kind of like, I come from my father's been an engineer, my mother's been a school teacher. We've got a humble background, and I'm very thankful to them for bringing us up the way they did, simple and stuff. So I said, "No, we don't have MTV," because at that time you had to have a dish antenna, special one.
Yeah.
And it used to cost like 40,000 rupees back in that time, man.
Correct.
Wow.
Yeah.
That big
Yeah.
amount of money. So, I said, "We don't," and they're like, "We got MTV," and I was like, "Okay." And the song from Dire Straits was spinning in my head.
You wanted your MTV, huh?
You wanted your MTV, yeah. Anyway, I said, "Great," and then they said, "Why don't you come over?" And we went. I went another day just to watch videos, and they said, "Have you heard of Millennium?" And I said, "Who's Millennium?" And they said, "It's a band from India." And I
Okay.
said, "Shit,
Wow.
India has a band," and they're like, "Yeah." And I had moments of like the first rock band that I saw in a Pakistani rock band to play on national TV was there were two bands, simultaneous appearances. They were hard rock bands. So one was called The Final Cut and one was called Barbarians, right? And but when I saw, and I thought it might be like a hard rock sort of a band, and when we saw that video, when he played that video, and I told this to Vernon recently, I said, "Dude, that was a moment that the camera is like sort of topish camera angle, and Vernon comes with his hair and he starts digging this the grave, I was like, whoa, man, that is so extreme. That is like, you're digging the grave of this chick who you loved. It's like it doesn't get more extreme than
Which
that.
song was this?
Only Be One was
Oh
their
yeah, only be one.
MTV.
Yeah, it is
Yeah.
that. Yeah.
Was their MTV thing, man. And yeah, I mean, I was like, and the fact that it was not just the image, it was actually the song was bloody amazing as well. I mean, Only Be One was. I still feel the opening riff is like I'm a riff person. I'm a very very riff person. I'm old school with all my. I've just started a new band as well,
Huh.
and it's quite extreme, more extreme than Dusk. But and all my songwriting still is going on in the riff based sort of a thing. I'm a riff person. I'm old school. I grew up on like blues rock and stuff like that. So all of my processing in my head is all riff based.
Cool.
And Millennium Ka the song was like da 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 da
Yeah.
da. It's amazing.
I think the only comment I have now is a very stupid joke that's come up in my head right at the moment. Is whenever I meet the boys from Millennium next, I'm gonna say, "Arey yaar, bahut din ho gaye Millennium." And on that really bad note, really bad joke. Let's talk a little bit about Dusk.
Okay,
Yeah.
cool, cool.
The thing is, like, you guys have had such a long career, and especially for, like, in South Asian band, right? So there's so
Mhm.
much to talk about, but let's just focus at least on, since you recently put out, unreleased tracks from 2010. So before
Yeah,
we get into those, in 2010, you guys did something where you released, a split with this band called Distrust, which is called
yeah,
Eastern Assault.
yes.
And as a listener, for me, I was very surprised because I've always known Dusk over as much as I'd heard till then, being like this, death doom band.
Yeah,
And
Yes.
the
here
riff
suddenly you all
oriented.
switched into, like,
Yeah.
this death, yeah, which we were talking about, which makes sense now. But it went into
Yeah.
like the death thrash. So was
Yes.
that like, a very conscious decision? What was the thing that inspired that shift in sound back then?
Yeah. So it's very strange, Dusk. I think first of all, I'd like to start by saying that I think the reason why Dusk has shifted so many gears is because I'm the only person who kind of runs Dusk,
Uh
and
huh.
not just the technical aspect, the creative aspect of it, everything. I'm sort of like a lone wolf when it comes to Dusk for all the years. I've never had people who, I mean, in Pakistan, I can have conversations on the phone with people who've heard like the first Morbid Angel album and stuff like that, but they're not musicians, right? They're fans of the music, they're not
Hmm.
musicians. So जो एक अरमान एक इच्छा ही रह गई है आज तक कि यार कोई एक इंसान ऐसा मिल जाए कि जो ये सारी चीजें सुनता भी हो और ये and at the same time I think my hunger for you could say unexplored slash extreme music has been so vast, touch wood, that I'm still a fan of the music, man. I mean, I listen to a lot of music every day in my life still, you know,
Hmm.
and what happened was it's a natural, so conscious decision nahi tha, it was more of an organic decision, organic
Hmm.
process, I would say. What happened with Dusk was with the first album, we started out more sort of like death doom sounding, but then you can see that half of that album is written by me, and the other half, uh, Pakistan's greatest guitar player, a living legend, Faraz Anwar, who's like a shred master, everything,
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah.
Faraz joins Dusk in 97, 98.
Hmm.
And
Yeah.
he's the teacher for the then Dusk guitar player, who then decides to make a career thing and he's not able to give much time to. And I said to Faraz, you're already programming the drums for us, so just play the guitars. And so Faraz started to write, and by the time the second album comes out, Faraz kind of takes over the entire process of songwriting for the record. I mean, I'm
Hmm.
there for the ideas, and I'm there for like, okay, let's have a more heavy riff here, more, let's have keyboard over here, let's have like the music stop here, and then
You're still
and
directing as such.
yeah, I'm
Yeah.
still kind of directing, but he's doing all the technical stuff,
Yeah.
even like, everything. And the bass playing is so technical on the second album that, I can't even play it. I'm like a straightforward, old school Venom Motorhead type of a person, right? But I really
Represent. Me
enjoyed
too.
that second. Yeah, good. So I really enjoyed that second album. After the second album, we went for a tour of Europe. Okay, so and this tour was very strange because we were playing without a drummer. So we had the drums recorded, on samples and stuff like that, with
Okay.
some keyboards and bass. We recorded live bass, and we have this kind of rough sounding mixed track playback, and then the two of us are playing like guitars and vocals, and we try to make something nice out of it. There's
Uh,
projections and
uh.
blah blah blah. So it was nice. But when I came back from that tour, I realized that I, I was not associating myself with the music that we were putting out much more at that point. I felt
Okay.
that I was growing distant. I felt that the Dusk sound had become too clinical, and I felt that some of the times in Czech Republic, bands that came before us or after us, like when our set, there would be like these geeky guys, you know, definitely no girls, but like geeky guys, sort of, with like looking at Faraz's hand on the neck of the guitar and like going like and very prog fans,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
and right after our set, I would see like uh, all of a sudden this black swarm of like people wearing leather and spikes like come in for the next band, which was like playing and like and I would be in the crowd with them like moshing and stage diving and shit like that. And I kind of started missing that. I started missing that whole element of like I started thinking that the music that Dusk was putting out was maybe no too clinical and too like saaf sutra,
Uh,
Yeah, yeah.
too much, clean. We were going into that whole. In 2003, our second album, you listen to the production for it. It's got a really small sound, but the production is beautiful. It's probably a better production than most bands in Asia were doing at that time.
Yeah.
And
I have the CD.
yeah, great, great. so, so after that, when I came back, I decided to switch gears. Also, me and Faraz had a falling out, and I put out an electronic album with which has got nothing to do with metal, but it's got everything to do with ambient sort of soundscapes and noise.
uh,
And I got all my filmmaking friends and theater friends to come in and do like dialogues and words, and it's got a very strange sound. It's called Contrary Beliefs.
Yeah.
The record label nearly shat in their pants when they heard it. They're like, dude, you said this was experimental, but this has got no guitars on it. I was like, yeah. So do you want to put it out or not? And they said, okay, or we'll put out like 500 copies only or some small number. I said, great, no problem. They put out a beautiful collector's item, Digipack. That chapter was over. Then when I got back into uh, the Metal Dusk, I put out the album called Dead Heart Dawning, the EP, which was also released as a split with Demonic Resurrection,
yep.
Severe Dementia. And you hear the sound on that, and that is like back to the crushing sort of like,
Yeah.
the death doom sort of like, the mid-tempo sort of like, raging sound. And after that album, I started shuttling between Karachi and Singapore. And this is the
Okay.
time when I joined Impiety to play on one of their albums.
Oh, yeah, correct.
Yeah.
When I was almost like living there because I'm a filmmaker. I was sort of shuttling between Karachi and Singapore. I used to go there for my post-production. I had some family there. So at that time, Arifin, the front man, the main man for Impiety, he had a store. He had a great store in the downtown of Singapore, which was like a hangout. It
Yeah.
could become a hangout for metalheads. It's a usual, and you'd go there all day, listen to his stories, have some coffee and chat. And we became really good friends. And he said, "Man, do you want to play on the next Empire record?" And I was like, "Whoa, really? Me?" And he's like, "Yeah, man, play bass, and we go out touring, and we'll screw the world and blah blah blah." And I was like, "Yeah, let's do it." And that was the time when I actually also got Halim, who's the Dusk drummer since 2008, 2007, 8. I got him into Empire.
Okay.
Because the guy, the drummer that Empire had been rehearsing with, things weren't working out. So Arifin one evening went through like a bit of a, that we all go through as when you're heading the ship and it's not in control anymore. And I said, "Dude, I know I have a friend here in Singapore. It's so strange. I'm coming all the way from Karachi and introducing two people in their own small little city, but it's kind of crazy." I said, no, I jam with someone, I know someone. And then Halim comes into Empire and we record that album, which was later called Formidonis Next Cultus. At the same time, myself and Halim become really good friends. We start hanging out, we connect over corny jokes, we connect over old school music, we connect over Thin Lizzy, we connect over Malay food, and we're like hanging out all the time. And
wow, what I wouldn't give for a good roti prata right now, man.
Oof. Seriously, man.
Sorry,
Seriously,
you
roti
mentioned
prata
Malay
is the
food.
stuff.
I'm like, yeah, I'm transported.
Yeah, I am also transported. I tell you, this is a big thing, huh? In Singapore, this is like, sometimes I want to write a paper, like an academic paper on this thing, that, food is where it comes from, and then it takes on another life to where
Yeah.
it becomes popular in,
Exactly.
Man, you eat the South Indian food in Singapore, it's got a life of its own.
Yeah,
Definitely.
completely.
Anyways,
So,
sorry, coming back. Empire. Yeah.
no problem. I'm sorry, yaar, I give really long sort of storytelling type
चलेगा.
answers.
This is
Sorry about that.
हमें बहुत मजा आ रहा है. I'm really enjoying this
Good,
conversation.
good,
Yeah.
good. So basically, what we started connecting over Thin Lizzy, and there's a band. Basically, now I'm coming to the sort of death thrash aspect. I got into a band in the early 2000s. They're a band from America, and they are the epitome of what you call the lo-fi sound. Okay. And
Okay.
the moment I listened to them on a 7-inch, I was like converted to their biggest fan. This is a band called Dead Moon. Okay.
Okay.
So Dead Moon releases 7-inch. It was a husband and wife. The husband has recently passed away. They also formed a band later called the Pierced Arrows, which was a little bit more commercially successful than Dead Moon. But Dead Moon is like a cult band. Like it's like, and they were like, they used to make their own instruments, and they used to press their own 7-inch mono, no stereo. Huh? Stereo is sacrilegion, mono only. So the sound will be mono. It is like the most lo-fi thing. And I just me and Halim just, my drummer is called Halim, and myself and Halim just got into just playing this lo-fi sort of like not giving a flying fudge about anything.
It's okay. You can use the normal word also.
Yeah.
It's allowed.
I try not to, man. From my, but we really sort of wanted to not give a shit about what people thought, and just do our thing. And hanging out with Arifin, the main man for Empire in his shop, he really pushed the rewind button in my head, and he reintroduced me to so much of like South American thrash and death from the 80s. And I was like, man, that's the sound. Bulldozer from Italy. I got really heavily into, so that is why, and it's kind of crazy and it's kind of unprofessional that I never changed the name of the band or didn't say this is a side project. I just said, it is all Dusk. Dusk can play this and Dusk can play that. And if we feel we'll play this, which is not, I don't think I did in retrospect, bloody hell, it sounds like I'm talking to my therapist now. But
That's okay.
Podcasting has that effect.
it
Yeah.
does, right? But it feels like in retrospect, it feels like probably not the best thing I would have done or should have done to my fan base, because I think I destroyed it a bit as well. Because we had a very very loyal sort of like a following with our death thrash sound, and I think that some of the times people just get confused, man, and you can't expect people to like jump ship with you every time and like do this and do that. Now we're not playing that style anymore. Anyway, this is all my adventures end in 2012 when we put out that split with Dying Embrace, 2013.
Yeah. Yeah.
And Sandesh comes back on board, my oldest friend in the Indian metal scene, by the way. I've known him back from 2000, I think. And so 20 years, and he said, dude, come back to what you're known for. And I said, yeah, it's about time. And I really missed playing this whole. So we're back to being what we are. But I feel one thing that this whole journey did good for me, guys, is that it made me realize what the whole organic, heavy, crushing sound that, and that is still there. That is something I brought back to the Dusk sound. It's not even much complex or proggy anymore. It's not very technical, but it's got that heavy edge to it still, which I needed to rediscover. Go back to my Motorhead, my Venom sort of roots of playing like three chords to a song and just going like at the end and finishing the song. Needed that.
You've taken us through this entire journey of your sound, but you kind of revisited it earlier this month when you put out a 2-track EP, which you've titled Black Moon Tapes Lost Recordings 2010, and it was released via LA Record Survivor. Sorry, LA Riot Survivor
Record.
Yeah. So why did you decide to get these tracks back, after 10 years, put them out online?
It's interesting, huh? I think coronavirus has got something to do with it.
Okay.
Because 2020 all of a sudden becomes the biggest unproductive year for artists, right?
Yeah.
Everybody's collaborating from their bedrooms. And, I've done that. I've done some very commercials, lyric writing for some collaborative projects in Pakistan. Other than that, I just felt it was a real damper for Dusk also, because I've been in full force recording the new full length. And we haven't put out a full length in almost 10, 12 years. Now we've only done a lot of splits and EPs and blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
So, we're finally doing a full length, and it put a real damper on the whole album recording process, right? Because bloody hell, you can't go to the studio. You can go to the studio. The person who you wanted in to do like 2 vocals on this thing, one thing is saying, no, I'm not meeting anyone for 2 months. I'm staying at home. So you can't push anybody's buttons. So
Exactly.
I said, okay, great. What? And I had these 2 songs. So guys, I hate it when you have stuff lying on your desktop somewhere on some folder. That's as good as nothing. I always tell people, in Pakistan especially, because Dusk, you can name it, Dusk, Dionysus, Taka Tuck, very few bands have actually put physical releases out.
Yeah.
Physical or digital, but publishing is not a thing for Pakistani music in terms of metal. It hasn't been. For Dusk, it's always been about publishing music. Put it out. Be it like 30 copies, bloody hand numbered, photocopied, Xerox, don't care. Put it out. तो मुझे हमेशा लगता है कि आपको जो चीज आपने की है, आप उसको पब्लिक को जरूर दें यार, बाहर दें आप उसको. So at the same time, I got back in touch with Anthony Drago, who runs LA Riot Survivor Records, and Anthony is one of my very close friends in the underground scene. He used to be the singer for Fingernails, which is Italian sort of heavy metal, hard rock heavy metal band. Very, very interesting classic metal sound. And Anthony put out this one Motorhead tribute album that had Abigail on it. It had Dusk on it. Dusk song that we did on it. In fact, Arifin from Infighty did the lead vocals on it. It's a killer track. We did a cover of Bomber actually.
Yeah.
So quite ridiculously fast and crazy shit. So I told Anthony, I said, I have some tracks lying, and he said, can we think of something? Can you think of how to? And I said I could package it nicely to be a digital EP release of, and we could. Then again, it's very important to contextualize. So I think the title of the EP makes somebody contextualize what the album is, and it's not the Dusk sound. Because I was like, no, one thing I don't want to do is I don't want to confuse people anymore. Saying, yaar, acha, ab phir ye log ye kar raha hai, wo kar raha hai. Again, it's that raw sound. What's up with that? So, I wanted to have a nice album title that sort of exemplifies what it is actually, So I just hated the fact that it's just lying around on some hard drive in my collection somewhere, man. Collecting dust, it should be out there, So, the record label was good enough to put it out, and it's giving us some mileage actually. I'm here with you guys now, and I've been on a few Zines. I've been on a few Zines recently, interviews. So it just, I think, rotates things, stirs things up a little bit.
Of course.
Why not?
Yeah, it does. It puts some much needed attention on you and on Dusk and on everything that you guys have been doing, which then leads me to ask, there are two songs here, two tracks.
Yeah. Yes.
Which one of them should we play on the podcast right now, and why that song over the other?
Well, I think you should play. As much as I love this album, this song called Soul Sabotage, but I feel you should play this song called Age of Intellect. Why? Because it starts with a beautiful guitar solo, and I told my guitar player at that time, my lead guitar player, I did all the guitars on it, but the solos have been played by somebody in Canada who was playing for Dusk at that time. I told him, I gave him the example of Wheels of Confusion from Black Sabbath. That's one of my favorite heavy metal songs to the date, man. I mean, people love Paranoid, and people love War Pigs, and people love my favorite songs from Sabbath are like Symptom of the Universe. I love Wheels of Confusion, and Wheels of Confusion, log worship karte hain guitar players ko. I mean, Van Halen, everyone is great, but I just feel Tony Iommi is such a beautiful lead guitar player as well. People just don't see that. His guitar solos are poof, right there, man. It hits you here. And that opening guitar solo for Wheels of Confusion, it's like the guitar is crying. It's like literally the guitar is like crying, in despair. And I told Umar, the guitar player at that time who was playing with us, said, wouldn't it be great if, this slow chords, you could think of a really sort of like not a whammy bar sort of crazy solo, do like a weird soulful solo, and he does an interesting, and then we go into the most played riff on the old school banner, which is like, everybody does it from Slayer to like Mutilator to everyone. So we do that. I mean, as a song also, it's okay. I think it's a good song, but I love the intro to it, and I like it where it goes. Yeah.
Okay, so let's hear that one right now. Here's Age of Intellect. So, Babar, you've been like doing this for a really long time, right? Here's a question that perhaps I don't know. Like the answer to this question can change every year or so. Like practically even every month. But in this day and age, what does the world really need to know about Pakistan's metal scene? Like, I'll tell you where this is coming from.
Yeah,
A couple of
yeah.
years back, not a couple of years back, like say 5, 10 years back, when Iron Maiden came down to India, it suddenly put India on the world metal map. And then,
Yeah.
for a couple of years, we had this whole thing of, Indian metal, right? So you had bands trying to do Indian metal by incorporating Indian instruments into it, and then later on, it now changed. It's now become like, we don't need to incorporate the Indianness into it as much because our music speaks for itself. And so you have bands like, Cryptos, etc.,
Hmm.
who are and Gutslit, who are doing the country proud as such on the world
Yes.
map. So the question really is, what does the world need to know about Pakistan's metal scene? And is there anything such as Pakistani metal?
Hmm. Very interesting. Um, when we started out, there was definitely influence, and with the if you look at old school metal also, there is always stuff. There's the mysticism of the East is always stuff been there, stuff that bands have flirted with. Be it like uh, like Wherever I'm at Home by Metallica with the sort of almost sitar intro
Huh,
there,
huh, huh.
when we were kids, it's like, whoa, man, they use the sitar, stuff like that. So with Dusk, I think, except for like a few albums, like for Dead Heart Dawning, also we tried to do Urdu. We tried to bring in Urdu as a spoken word. Even on the new album, there's going to be Urdu. On the new album, I'm actually inviting some singers. I've invited some singers to do clean vocals along with me, which are
Nice.
very, very on the eastern side. But but I just feel it's a very, very thin line that bands cross to start sounding tacky. Like I remember, I've been to Wacken, I've been to big festivals of the world, and when I have a folk metal band come on stage, I'm the first person out of the arena, man. I'm like, no, I can't listen to that. And
Yeah.
I don't know.
There's a
There's something.
thin line in between being authentic and gimmicky, I think.
Yeah,
Right?
Yeah, like
Yeah.
that's well put.
you remember the first album by Moonspell, their big album. Maybe it's the second album or the first album, Wolf Art, the album. Usme there's a song called Alma Mater, and it's got a really sort of like interesting sort of like Portuguese folk music inspired riff. I think for me it stops there. I think it stops there. I think um, for me, Chaos AD of Sepultura, it stopped there when in Chaos AD, when they brought some folk elements from the Brazilian side, when they brought it
The
in
drums.
Roots and all of the other stuff, when they brought it in, it was an overkill for me. Before that, it was the right balance. Same goes for bands like more melodic bands like Amorphous, maybe. I think when they were playing their Tales of a Thousand Lakes, that album, great. The riffs had all this Finnish folk melodies, but
Yeah.
it was still death metal. Very tastefully done. But when they started getting flutes on the, I was like, no man, I like my Jethro Tull. Don't mess with that. So I don't know if there's really any Pakistani metal as per se, if you ask me, because I personally think there's tons of bands that have actually gone ahead and done it. Rudra from Singapore has been
Yeah,
incorporating all South
Yeah.
Indian, especially instruments into the. So why do something um, why should somebody redo a Slayer song the same way? Either you completely change it or you don't do it, right? So something like that. And as far as I think there's also got. I think the past 10 years was very damaging for the art scene in Pakistan, starting from the early 2000s, post 9/11, when all the uh, stuff hit the fan, shit hit the fan in
Yeah.
Pakistan in terms of bomb blasts and this and that. The music industry, the art scene, that gets the first hit always. The cultural scene always suffers the first when the हालात जब खराब होते हैं, when things
Yeah.
go south with political unrest and this and that. These things will suffer the first. And that is the time I really feel that some band could have been making. And we've got probably 20 times more visa restrictions than you guys do.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know, we and that wasn't the case, man. I remember in 1997, 98, I was a student and we used to go to the British embassy in the morning, and by afternoon, give you
You'd
the
get the
passport
visas,
with
huh?
like visa. Okay, great. I wanted to. We once did a backpacking trip, me and this other friend of mine from my college,
Huh.
and we just said we'll fly to London with all the money we have, and then we'll just take hitchhike all the way, and we did that. Anyway, I'm meaning to say it was much easier back in the 90s, and it became so complex that it's not even funny. So traveling, all of this stuff. When I was playing with Empathy also,
Huh.
you know, one of the reasons why I kind of couldn't continue with them was also because it's so complex that it just puts a damper. First I have to fly from here to Singapore. Then half of the European countries I need visas from Karachi only. You know, then even though at that time there was Schengen visa was there, and I had a valid Schengen visa, but because of my work as a filmmaker, but a lot of countries at that time were not in the Schengen treaty. Like Poland
Yeah.
was not
Yeah.
in
Yeah.
Schengen at that time. They were
Yeah.
coming in. Czech Republic wasn't in Schengen, so things were like it's so complex that it just puts a damper on the whole thing. So that's why I feel बाहर से भी बैंड्स नहीं आ सके और ये बैंड्स भी वहां नहीं जा सके. Also, the other thing that I feel that happened, the biggest rock band that we've had in Pakistan has been Junoon. Okay?
Okay.
So, Junoon
Yeah.
is the biggest rock band, not only for Pakistan, but I think for subcontinent at that time. They were probably the biggest big guns
Yeah.
of the rock scene back in the early 90s, right? Um, but I think Junoon's fan base only appealed to Pakistanis, Indians, Bangladeshis, and expats of the same nationalities abroad. So they weren't doing anything that Kryptos is doing on a very smaller scale. If you compare it to what Junoon was doing, Kryptos is very small, but Kryptos plays the music that doesn't. It's got nothing like Kryptos is Indian metal, but it's got nothing Indian about it as per se. It's a
Correct.
very
Yeah.
westernized sort of an interpretation of metal. I love Kryptos and I love their sound. And they definitely, I mean, don't get me wrong, they have a very individualistic approach to what they play. I think that mix of, that you hear a very classic metal guitar, but his vocals throw you off, and you're like, okay, that's like almost a black metal guy, sort of like singing almost thrashy.
Yeah.
Reminds me of early death thrash stuff like Morbid Saint and stuff like that. So, but you know what I mean. One thing is that the Indianness or the Pakistaniness comes with the content and the instruments and the sound. And the other thing is that we just appeal to people beyond borders. I think that's what bands like Kryptos, Demonic Resurrection, Dusk even, has been doing. That Dusk will not only appeal to Pakistanis or Indians or Sri Lankans or Bangladeshis. It will appeal to equally to somebody from Bulgaria or Mexico. You know what I mean? It just has to be speaking the metal language of metal.
Cool.
Alright.
Cool.
Yeah, that completely makes sense. I mean, I remember Junoon watching their videos here in India, and they were huge. But
Yeah, Junoon
So
was huge, man. Yeah.
yeah. So coming back to an earlier episode we did with another Pakistani artist who you mentioned, Takatak, right? So
Yeah.
earlier in Jan, we had them on the podcast, and they were
Yeah.
telling us, again, this was their time when they first started out about the gig scene in Lahore, and playing the Gloria Jeans Cafe and things like that. Now, this is all courtesy Hassan, who had on his blog put up some old pictures of early 2000s gigs in Karachi. So I've seen pictures of the Karachi Rock Fest, Zack
Yeah.
Fest, and things like that. I mean, when I looked at it, and I was remarking to Animesh, if you look at that and forget that it was Pakistan, it looks exactly like how the gigs were here in India, where you had the Domination, the Death Fest at Raz and things like that. It was
Hmm.
exactly the same. So
Yeah.
can you just take us back to those days? I mean, there's a great picture of you, by the way, I saw on stage.
Hmm. Hmm. I
So what?
unfortunately with Dusk, yeah, sure. Do you want to add more to the question, or is that
No, so I'm saying just take us back to what those days in Karachi were. I mean, because like from what we understand, at least from talking to the Takatak boys, like live gigs are kind of dead in Pakistan,
dead,
right? And
completely
so
dead?
what was Karachi like back then, like the early to mid 2000s at least?
Yeah, early to mid 2000s was very interesting. There was a very active live scene here. Bands were unfortunately not putting out publishing material music. They were not, but they were very much into playing live. There was an active death thrash sort of a scene happening here. Doom bands nahi the itne, more like, I think melodic death, thrash bands. There was a band that started out right after. I would actually give them credit as being the second band to appear on the local scene after Dusk, which was a band called Autopsy Gothic. Um, and they were not a gothic band at all. They were just called Autopsy Gothic, and they played covers from like At the Gates. They had a few good originals as well. Really nice, sort of like pure death metal sort of a sound. Uske baad there were some other bands as well, and at the same time, I also in around 2000 I wanted to be a part of the live scene because I couldn't, because Dusk could never play live, because you need a
Okay.
bloody ensemble. You need the drummers that were available to us at that time. I'll put it very, very straightforward for you. The drummers that were available for us, or the musicians, or if I was doing vocals, I couldn't possibly do bass and vocals. If I was doing the vocals, I need a bass player. Those musicians were not available for Dusk because the songwriting Faraz had made it so complex in a beautiful
Hmm.
way. I loved what he did. So that was a shattered dream. I was like, okay, this is not happening. What we can play is like the D beat sort of. So I was like, okay, fine, I'm going to do a D beat mixed with real old school death thrash, Motorhead inspired sound. And I had a band as well at that time. And
Okay.
and we did a lot of, and I it was full of stage gimmick. We used to wear makeup. I used to go up with a bottle of fake blood, pour that all over me,
Wow.
and and do that shit. I remember, and Lahore also had like bands that were. So I think this is way before the Takata or
Yeah,
bands
yeah,
like
yeah.
that
Yeah,
were
of
picking up.
course.
But there was,
Yeah.
yeah, but there were other bands from Lahore. There was a band called Corpse Fire. Corpse Fire. There was a band in Karachi called Soul Vomit. I think great name. There was a
Yeah,
band
I
called
think
Nocturnal Rust. All of these bands, they had maybe one or two originals, but most of them put out a great live show. So we did several shows. We used to fly out to Lahore also. I remember some of the more commercial bands who were fringing on like rock, commercial rock sound. They're always the boys who do the shows and bring the bucks in and this and that. And then a lot of them would be fans of our style of music, and they'd be like, nahi yaar, aap logon ne bhi bajana hai. Great. Okay, we'll play. We would fly out and play Lahore. So it was a great live scene. I think it's typical of what you see in India, Bangladesh. I think the rhythm resonates inside all of us.
Yeah.
All our DNAs are full of rhythm. चाहे आप किसी मुझे लगता है किसी मज़ार पे भंगड़ा किसी मज़ार पे ढोल बज रहा हो या किसी शादी पे भंगड़ा बज रहा हो, you know, uh, you know, yeah, metal, really loud sort of, rhythm oriented metal with like,
Yeah.
Yeah.
people just go mad, you know. And this is exactly what used to happen with the band I had at that time. We also published with that band, but
Which one was
we
this?
this was a band called Northern Alliance.
Northern Lions. Okay, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So we also published a four-song, seven-inch with that band as well.
This was on Legion of Death, right?
Legion of Death. We
Yeah.
we got a four-song called "Death Anthems for a World of Shit," um, and so very punk approach to the whole thing. Very DIY. I've always been fan. I've never been a fan of polished stuff, man. Um, I've always been like a big fan of like the rawness of in metal, you know. Even though sometimes with my Dusk stuff it doesn't show because we tend to push for the more clean sound because it is that sound. It's sort of more prog influenced technical death metal. When you produce it lo-fi, it sounds like shit actually. So you
Yeah.
have to polish it
It
up,
needs
you know.
nuance, yeah. Matlab, you need better production to be able to detect that nuance.
Yes.
Otherwise, it's just it'll just sound muddy as shit. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so and then all of a sudden these shows started, just going down, man. And
Yeah.
I think either people who were playing those shows grew up, got married, started having responsibilities. That happens because it
Yeah.
happens simultaneously. People don't realize that, but that's a big factor in our countries where there's no social
Exactly.
wealth,
Yeah.
there's no social security. तो ये आपको घर बैठे हुए कोई पैसा नहीं देगा, आपको मेहनत करनी है. आप मेटल पे बजा रहे हो तो बिग चांस 80-90% चांस के somebody is coming from beginnings like you, myself and Peter, you know. विरसे में जायदाद कुछ भी नहीं मिला है, जो है वो खुद है. And big chance
Correct.
in Pakistan at
Yeah.
that time, most of us were belonging to the middle class, you know.
Yeah.
Sort of middle class of the society, upper middle class of the society, and most of us were like, just we were just sort of, coming from small little apartments and bedrooms and like, so a lot of people need to start earning, need to get their shit together, need to like,
Yeah.
get a job. And then, not everybody is lucky, I believe, like myself, touch wood, that I actually managed to sort of have a career and at the same time still do Dusk. And because I wanted to, I was too much Dusk. Heavy metal has saved me from a lot of crap in my life.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It
Black
becomes
and
the
black.
soundtrack to our lives, and at the
Yes.
same time, But
Yeah.
whatever. Like that's an entire different conversation altogether. Which
I think
which
honestly,
we,
what your sentiment, what you said, is something I've heard Sahil Makija, aka Demon Stealer, from Demonic Resurrection, keep talking about. And I think maybe it's time we get like all of y'all from different countries talking about, because in the end, it's everyone's in the same boat.
I know
Yeah, you
exactly
should.
which song we should like get them under and do a music video or something of that sort. We need to get Punk Rock Days Are Gone by Split.
That'd be a nice one. Let's,
Yeah.
Animesh,
Yeah,
this is our quarantine project. Let's do it, man.
seriously should do it. We should all do it. I could play bass, Sahil could do something, or we could do like, we could do a Motorhead song or something, just like,
Animesh plays bass. There you go.
Hey, you can't have two bassists. We are not
I'll play triangle. huh?
Spinal Tap
I'll
yet.
play triangle.
it could be two bases. Why not,
Yeah, why not? Why not? Chalo, wo karte hain. Anyways,
So, I mean, just to kind of fast forward back into like present time, I mean, you touched upon this earlier. You're working on a new full-length album. Is this continuing with your doom metal sound? What can you tell
Yeah.
us about it? I mean, you've told us a bit about the clean vocals and stuff.
yeah.
Yeah, so I think definitely going on from where we started out with Dead Heart Dawning, more doom death sound. We did change in the middle when we did Eastern Assault, but then in 2013 when we came out with Through Corridors of Dead Centuries with Dying Embrace, which is one of my favorite releases that we ever did, because Dying Embrace is just so close to my heart, man. You know,
Yeah.
those guys are really like brothers, and very, very solid sound. I love their sound. Um, yeah, definitely picking up from the same vibe from there. Um, I have towards the end of that EP, there's a track on it called "For Majestic Nights,"
Hmm.
and that is sort of where I was beginning to go with my doom death sound. So you asked me my my top five albums of all times. I don't think there will be a metal album on there. Probably a Sabbath album, but nothing more than that, right?
Okay.
So, meaning to say, my tastes are so diverse. If you do a day in the life of with me, you'll probably hear very few. So I'm really influenced by a lot of music which is non-metal. But and I started bringing in those influences since I'm
Okay.
not really a technical lead guitar player. I started so I'm a really big fan of The Cure. Uh,
Okay.
like a huge fan.
Okay.
Okay, so I wanted to bring that in, and it starts coming into the end of in the on the Corridors EP. The last song is for Majestic Nights, and I'm sort of playing like these two, three layers of guitars, but very inspired by actually The Cure. Only difference is it doesn't sound happy and
Mm-hmm.
upbeat like The Cure, but it's got this. It's of course it's got the technicality of The Cure, where I'm just playing like these open sort of big chords, and then I'm sort of very old school like analog pedal, and I'm finger picking on that with like a very overdriven
Sound. Yeah.
mid to it, so it
Yeah.
sounds like a weird sort of sound. So I did that experiment and I loved the way it came out. Sandesh loves that song as well. I think it's his favorite song on the
Yeah,
EP.
he's a huge The
And
Queer fan also, I think.
yeah. So I wanted to, when I was writing this album, I wanted to sort of encapsulate a lot of my influences. Like I love Immolation, the death metal band from US, and I love the fact that they're so crushing and they have these really slow crushing parts. I wanted to bring that in. I also wanted to combine like this whole layered sound that Euronymous did with early Mayhem. If you look at the Demistris album, he does this very layered sort of a sound. So the new album is it's like a culmination of a lot of my influences.
Okay.
It definitely falls under the banner of death doom metal for sure,
Okay.
mainly because of my vocals. Also, I have a lot of it's like I think another band that influenced me a lot in terms of the past 10 years of their work or 12 years of their work. They've been there much before, but the past 10, 12 years, they really pushed the envelope. Is a band called Enslaved from Norway, of course.
Yeah.
And their production, I just appreciate their production because they completely push the envelope every time without sounding wimpy or cheesy. No Enslaved album can you say, this is like, okay, this is like, sounding too poppy now. It doesn't. They do something, they still get that balance of sounding brutal, sounding heavy, because doing a technical or like a more dark music inspired, ambient inspired album, it's a big chance you fall out of that brutal, heavy bracket and you land up somewhere like, which is like very flimsy. I
Uh,
hate bands like that. So I always wanted to sound like, when the distortion comes in, it should be like, okay, this is massive, this is big, this is dark, this is brutal, but also I have a lot of other things. Also, I'm like I told you, I'm into The Cure. I'm heavily into Kate Bush. I listen to a lot of Depeche Mode. Uh, heavy metal fans are going to kill me, huh? No.
No, but
So
no,
Depeche
but
Mode
all
is
of the bands that you mentioned are all bands that metalheads enjoy.
yeah, true.
yeah, for sure, for
Yeah.
sure. But in terms of influences also, I'm as much as I love Morbid Angel, and it's one of my favorite death metal bands. I don't listen to Morbid Angel to be inspired to do a song. I'll probably listen to a Kate Bush song. I'd listen to a Johnny Cash song, and I'd be inspired to do not a replica, but it's different. It's like one that part is inspiring something in your head, and something else completely different is coming out of it. So um, and and this is what and the past 2 3 years I've been really into. Uh, I think it started out with the second album only. I got into recording field recordings. So I got into field recordings, and a friend of mine
Okay.
used to do them, and I got a lot of field recordings from, every place, from markets to dargahs to worship places, and I used to put them into the second album. Has got a lot of sampling on it.
Yeah, yeah.
Lot of sampling. There we've got some Tibetan monk in the middle of something with feedback. So I give that a new direction now. I started experimenting. I got myself an analog synthesizer, like
Okay.
almost like a small mini Moog.
Okay. Yeah.
So it's not a Moog, but it's as old school as a Moog actually. And whatever I could get my hands on in Karachi, somebody was selling it, and I was like, amazing.
Uh,
I want
uh,
that. So उसपे मैंने, and I'm not a keyboard player. As I mentioned before, I'm one of the most non-technical people out there. So I kind of started doing my own thing. So 2 or 3 of the tracks on the new Dusk are also those things, which are like soundscapes. Uh, you can call it electronic music, of course, but I think it's got stuff like um, I've got a poem by Rabindranath Tagore on one of the tracks, where
Okay.
I'm doing some weird twiddling with some synthesizer sounds, and this is beautiful. Tagoreji is my hero, huh? So Tagore for me is doom metal, huh? By the way, I,
Oh,
so
wow.
Rabindranath Tagore for me is doom metal. So
Completely understand where you're coming from. I mean,
yeah,
having heard Rabindra Sangeet as a kid, yes, it's musical and it's definitely melodic, but at the same
yeah,
time, it is
yeah.
metal. Yeah.
Yeah, it talks about all the things that metalheads relate to, right? It talks
Exactly.
about
Yeah.
big trees. It talks about the falling of thunder and rain. Dead leaves on the ground. A lot of my Duska lyrical content is all about that as well. So I'm having a lot of these kind of experimentation. So the album is basically 8 or 9 tracks. It's 8 tracks. 5 of them are pure epic sort of death doom metal stuff, and songs are long. Average is 5.5 minutes. I think one of the songs goes up to 8 minutes plus. um, Something uh, I didn't mention to our guitar player who's actually appearing on this album. I didn't tell him कि वो solo parts जो है वो इतने लंबे लंबे हैं, And so I just sent him the stuff, and I'm still waiting to hear from him in terms of what is this, so many solos. So I have that, and that's pretty traditional death doom stuff. 5 songs, and then 3 of the songs are like these weird analog synthesizer type things that I'm doing. I've got featured a saxophone player on one of the things. So I'm
Okay.
doing these things which are like weird and stuff, still like out there in terms of more traditional metal would not do that. But I
Okay.
like doing this experimentation.
Hmm.
Um, uh, it would be a good platform to reveal also something that I've been dying to tell people, and hopefully it's coming through. Is that I asked my one of my childhood heroes
Ah.
to if he would recite a narration on the intro of the album,
Okay.
and he agreed, man. So we will have, hopefully, if all goes well and touch wood. I just was exchanging some emails with him last night actually. The intro is going to be a spoken word by Wino of Saint Vitus and the
Oh,
Obsessed.
wow.
So yeah,
Wow.
yeah. So I've been
Congratulations.
thank you,
Touch wood.
man. Thank you. Yeah. So Wino he's been my hero since forever, man. It's for me, it's Black Sabbath, and then it's the Obsessed and Saint Vitus and everything. I grew up with that stuff, and metalheads are the nicest people, actually. To be honest
That's
with you.
true. That's true.
Honestly, man, seriously. And
Okay.
yeah, and we've also got Santiago Dobles, who is the lead guitar player for Agora. He's going to be he's my guitar player on this record, not for the guitars, but for the lead guitars. He's playing lead guitars on the album.
Okay.
So Dusk always has a legacy of guitar solos. I try to move away from it, but I can't. Even though I love shred guitar solos, and a part of me still is a big fan of listening to, you know, I think पिछले दिनों I was listening to some 20 guitar players from your Indian scene,
Okay.
and they were like killing it, man. Or all these guys are super
Yeah,
young
yeah.
shredders, all bedroom shredders, all playing like 8 or 7 string instruments, and they're like killing it, man, killing it, you know. And so, sorry,
I think
your voice
I
is on
think
the thing.
patterns come easily to us. And
Yeah.
and with that also, like, patterns and rote learning, right? And but instead of rote learning here, you're note learning.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
So,
So
yeah.
you've talked at length about this album and this upcoming album, and what's the question that's building in my head is how personal this album is going to be, right? Because you're mentioning doing a lot of stuff which sounds more Babar than it does sound Dusk. Okay.
Mm,
Um, Also, in the very beginning of this chat, you mentioned that you've got a new project in the works that's not going to be Dusk.
yeah,
So,
yeah.
what's can you try and help us make sense of this? Like, what's Dusk then? What's Babar then? And what's new project then? Or is it all? Should it? Can you essentially become like the Devin Townsend of Pakistan in that sense, or where it's only one name that encapsulates everything that you do? Enslaved's done that, right? They moved from one sound to the other, and now and you can't define Enslaved as anything else than Enslaved, right? You
Yeah.
can't define Isan as anything other than Isan. You can't define I don't know what's another fabulous example. Dark Throne, for that matter, who keep changing their styles
I don't
each.
know how he didn't bring up Dark Throne. Dark Throne is
Yeah,
like,
yeah, right.
Dark
What's
Throne also,
happening?
I feel. So what is happening is part of who Babar is goes into Dusk, a very heavy part, because primarily, as much as I would want to, I am 50% of Dusk, because since 2007, I'm very happy to report that I have, a partner in crime in Dusk, who's my drummer. But because of our distance, because of the fact that he's in Singapore, I'm here, we can't compose together. And it's very different. The Eastern Assault was composed together. It was
Okay.
actually written together in the jam room. That's why it sounds so like raw and like trashy and all of that. Um, but so you can say, a big part of it, don't dictate him how to play the drums on it. He just knows how to get my riffs, and he knows exactly the beat I'm thinking. This is going to be half time. This is going to be like more like a behemoth sort of like a thing. This is more Pete Sandoval sort of like thing all over the place. So I think who I am, a big component of that goes into Dusk. I'm into a lot of ambient music. I'm into folk music. I of course can't bring folk music, so I need outlets. I need outlets for sure. Um, a lot of my folk influences of the Indo-Pak subcontinental
Huh.
folk music
Huh.
goes into another band I play in, which is quite a well-known band in our region called Chantara Orchestra.
Yeah.
Um, I play with this band, and this was actually also something that I started. I started out this band, um, but uh, but yeah, I mean, a lot of my so I feel when my folk influences go in towards that side, then I don't want to bring them here, you know. And as far as the new Dusk is concerned, I think it's going to be a good mix. I think it's definitely going to be a mature effort. I don't want to use the word immature for our previous stuff, but you know what I mean. You know, I'm a different person.
Yeah,
We
yeah,
change
of course.
every month, every week, every year.
Yeah.
We change as people, and I think from the last time that we put out something as like a EP or a full length was almost like 6 7 years back. You know, so it's going to be a lot of stuff that's changed over time. Yet, it is important for me that it could still be categorized as dusk. I don't think, to answer the second part of your question, I don't think there's ever going to be a project called Babar Sheikh. You know,
No, no,
uh,
I didn't mean it literally in that sense.
yeah. I know what you mean, but I know what you mean. But I have a. It's almost like a complex I have inside me that um, for so many years, because I've never been a part of a band, I've
Uh-huh.
missed out on that. I've missed
Yeah.
out on that. I've missed out on creating metal music, extreme metal music in a jam room with like-minded musicians. I've been a loner. I've been a loner throughout because
Wow.
I've never found people. You know, I've never found people. Yeah, it's a what you call in Urdu in Hindi arman. It is a arman inside. Yeah, you know, you drive to a place, you've got nice amps, guitars, got nice amps. I've got the guitars. I've got access to good musicians all over the world. But you know, the fact that that didn't exist here,
Hmm.
or it was the wrong chemistry for the wrong time. So this new band that I'm talking about is actually being put together because of this whole thing. It's
Okay.
still a band which is unfortunately or fortunately it's still remote. It is not. Um, no two people of this band live in the same city, but it's all I can tell you right now. It's still under wraps, but I
Okay.
can tell you the genre. It's straightforward, uncompromising, crushing death metal music. Um, the way we all like it, you know. And the second thing I can tell you about it is that it's an all Asian lineup for sure.
I was
And
just going to ask that.
Yeah, it's all Asian, and I'm happy to report that it's in the region as well. Yeah.
Yeah. So my question was going to
That-
be, is there any Indian on it?
Okay, the fourth member of the band is right now Indian, but that person is not contributing with instruments on the album. It's more like his brainchild, his whole concept, etc., etc. That person is Indian. The person who got us together is Indian. Uh, but but to answer your question, I have a very crazy idea because I have recently discovered the guitar player who I've just become such a big fan of.
Okay.
Um, he's Indian. I think he's Caucasian, but he lives in Pune or Bombay, I think. Yeah.
Daniel
So I
Rego?
might just ask him for. No. You don't want to guess. Why do you want to guess?
I'm telling you, it's like the moment we're done with this conversation, I'm calling up Sandesh. Like, hey, what's up, man?
Yeah, I think Sandesh will be no, but I think this is something I we might have a because there's going to be lead guitar on the thing, and I'm playing guitars on this album on the new band. I'm playing guitars and probably just filling for bass right now for the recording. Um, the drums and the vocals are by different people, but none of us can play lead guitars to save our ass. And with this kind of stuff, you need to have something, you know. So I feel that I might ask this person. Also, interesting because you asked, there's a big chance that I might put Dusk into hibernation right after this full length album. Um,
Oh, wow. Okay.
Okay.
yeah.
You think you've outgrown
Um,
Dusk?
I, mm, I don't know. I don't
At
know
this
if I
point in time,
have,
yeah?
but I have some. Yeah, I have some ideas that I want to put out, and those might not really be metal, but they are still in the realm of extreme music, I think. Um, तो मुझे लगता है कि एक तो यार this album has it's been a taxing journey, man. I've been doing this alone, dude. I'm telling you, you know, for the past 3 years, I've been writing this material. Having somebody who's sitting in Singapore do the drums, uh, send them back. Half of the album is recording here. Harmonies.
Yeah, it's a challenge, man. It's a challenge.
It's a challenge. Like right now, my introduction to the metal world is that I'm a singer and a bass player. People don't know me as a guitar player, even though I've played, very little people know that I've played rhythm guitar on all Dusk albums, but on all of it actually, except for one album. But for me, I'm right now actually probably not going to be playing bass on the album. That is the last instrument that's still left to do, by the way.
Are you still looking for a bassist?
I am.
I'm very this thing, like what do you say? Just very innocently raising hand.
Just
Seriously,
saying.
huh?
No, I'm just kidding. No. Maybe I'm not.
You made
I don't know. Whatever. We'll talk later.
Let's talk later. Let's talk later. But Santiago had an idea. Santiago had an idea that I asked the bass player from Agora to play, who's a really technical player. But I don't know where that is going. It might just happen. It might just not. Also the fact that because when we were going to record the bass, because of some stupid delays, and then we had these rains, which were unprecedented rains that happened in Karachi this year. And because of that, the studio where we were recording got flooded. In wake of that, they don't have a bass amp. A lot of their guitars got messed up. They're claiming insurance, but luckily all of my gear was back home. I am now up to here with Dusk. I think I've just put in all creative juice I had in me. इतना हो गया कि मुझसे अब bass नहीं बजाया जा रहा. My main instruments, I'm sitting here with 2 basses hanging on the walls right now. I am known as a bass player, but मुझसे खुद bass नहीं, because I just feel that I just can't do it anymore on the album. It just probably will sound too one-dimensional if I play the bass. I want a different hand on it. I want another person's expression on it. So yes, I think I don't know if I'll put it into a hibernation, and Dusk is a recording act primarily. Even though the record label owner from LA Riot Survivor Records is really saying after the pandemic, we want to get you guys for a couple of shows out in Italy. I said, that's going to be great if we can. And there have been opportunities in the recent 5-6 years also to play Bangkok, to play Singapore. Unfortunately, because I do really intense work. I work in the film industry. And when I get film industry dates, then that means I'm kissing my career goodbye by saying no to them. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Completely get it.
So मैं बड़ा घबराता हूँ to commit dates beforehand. What if I can't make it last moment? I'm getting a super big gig, which so it's kind of funny. But there are some other influences that I want to pursue. Might be Dusk, might not be Dusk. Let's see. But definitely this one side project band's definitely coming out. I already told you it's a death metal band, and really looking forward to do at least one song and put it out online by the end of the year. So that's going to be soon.
We've hardly got some time. We've hardly got the time left. Wow. Okay, so it's been approximately, say, 90 minutes or so that we've been chatting, and I feel we can keep going on forever. But you know what? I think we should maybe make this a monthly feature, a catch up with Babar, brewing with Babar, what's brewing with Babar, or something of that sort. Because it seems to me that you're in a stage where there's a lot of new ideas that are bubbling in that head, and you want to just end up releasing them. Which is
crazy.
Great. Yeah.
Crazy.
Wow.
I know when we're getting you on the podcast next, before the end of the year, like you said.
Anytime, bro. It's going to be an honor. I mean, I started the first podcast about music and art and film and literature all under one umbrella. From Pakistan, we started the first podcast called Mad Art Culture. And I
Hmm.
was doing this with one my longtime collaborator, Umran Shafiq, who is the guitar player for Chansara Orchestra. And if you've seen any Pakistani Coke Studios, so he's the main guitar player for Coke Studio also for all the seasons, except for I think one season. He was in all the seasons. So he's a very seasoned session player.
Ah.
And Umran and myself, we used to just do this, man. Just fucking get on line and just talk and just chat, and it was the best thing. And then after 30 episodes, I don't know what happened. I think we got the stupid idea to make it video as well. And stupid idea. Podcast should never go through that. Never.
No, man, it can, but you need to have that much time and
Yeah.
dedication, and more importantly,
didn't.
funding to justify all that time and effort.
And we clearly didn't, and uski wajah se hamara audio podcast bhi ho gaya. But it was lovely. It just brings so many memories of what I was doing with Umran on the podcast. So lovely, man. It's great to touch base. And thank you so much. You guys are such a great scene out there in India. And there's such a great appreciation for art and music out there, man. And thank you for actually inviting me over to talk, you know.
Definitely, the pleasure was all ours.
Lovely.
Monthly chat sessions with Babar. Peter, what do you think of the idea?
I love it. And I think Babar is also up for it, considering that he used to host a podcast. But hey, we don't have to make it video, huh? You know what he said about video.
Well, what do you think of the idea? Let us know. We are all ears at hornsupod.com. Such a smooth segue, right? Reach out to us on Twitter. We are at hornsupod. I'm at Asmo Annie.
I'm at Trend Crusher.
This is Horns Up.
Horns up, guys.